which leads me to another point, which if the path of the level is to split, as in go in two different directions, follow a simple rule. The main path, the one that you want them to follow, the one that's going to get them to the end of the level, should always be the easiest one to follow. And I'm not talking about easiest to see, well, not just easiest to see, but if they were just to hold right on the stick, that'll just get them to the end. That will get them to where they need to go. This is a tragic thing, but at the same time, a lot of people, they just want to hold right and see lots of fun stuff happen. So just bear that in mind, that if you put the main path of the level on a difficult route and there's an easier option, they'll just take the easier one and end up in a dead end. And you'll be like, oh, actually you were supposed to go up there? And they'll go, huh, what? Oh, up. Oh, that looked a bit hard, so I just went down. I said, okay, good. And be well signposted by collectibles or any other method listed above. Good, I'm just not going to that anymore. Now this is really important, because if a player believes they're heading in the correct direction and instead find a secret area or dead end, this is often less than desirable. Now you'd imagine as a game designer that if you built an area which had tons of awesome collectibles in and really magical secret stuff, like a chest full of awesome gems, and a player walks in this room and goes, oh, a chest full of magical gems, open it up and go, yeah, great, this is really cool, but I thought this is where I was supposed to be going and now there's nothing else. First of all, you've kind of ruined that surprise to them, because they weren't expecting to find it and therefore haven't achieved anything. They haven't gone, hey, wait a second, there's a collectible box in that room, I just know it. And then you go in there and there is one and you think, ah, I knew it, I'm smarter than the game designers. Because that's what happens, right? You think, oh, okay, I've learned in this game that if the path is that way, there's going to be some fun stuff down there. I mean, Dead Space is one of my favourite games of year before last, it was last year? I love that game, and there's two reasons why I love it. One is because it's got zombie monsters in it, and the second is because they've got a great button, which is the where do I go button. Has anyone else played Dead Space in here? Yeah, brilliant, I love this game, so I can talk to you about it in depth. in Dead Space, if you push the left stick in, Isaac, the main character, will shine a light, and this light will go, it will show you where to go. If you're going the wrong way, he'll turn you to face the right way. He'll turn round and face the right way. So if you're ever stuck, you just use the button and it shows you. And that also means that any corridor the light doesn't go down, so left and right, is a scary secret place where there's going to be fun stuff to find or evil things to kill. And that's really good news, because then you've already got the players thinking, right, well, I'm supposed to go down there, but I'm going to go down here. And then they walk down that corridor and then suddenly they're in a place they're not supposed to be, and they'll start feeling more and more nervous. It's a magnificent piece of design, because by showing them where they're supposed to be, they can become scared of and excited about the places they're not supposed to be. Yeah. Oh, of course, if you go into a secret area and usually it's just a secret level area with a bunch of boxes, and you open them all up, and you go, right, okay, now where do I go? And you have to go, oh, I have to go back in myself. And players hate going back in themselves. It's really not cool to make them have to keep going back to the same area, because it means they're lost. Sorry, I should have brought that up at the start. I just basically said all that and then we lost the impact of that one. Players hate getting stuck. And you're probably thinking, well, obviously they hate getting stuck, isn't that obvious? But importantly, what you think is a clever maze and an exciting, oh, where do we go? If the player goes in here, he'll be trapped and he won't know where to go, and it'll be really fun because he'll be trying to work his way out. It never works that way. What they do is they walk in, they get lost, and then they leave your game, and then they just never play it again. And that's really horrible when you've got an awesome game and then all you've done is basically made it feel like hard work, like the player doesn't know where to go. This is a great example of a quote I was given by one of my old colleagues who left Media Molecule a little while ago. He worked at Insomniac on Ratchet & Clank and on Resistance Fall of Man. And one thing they realized was that the simplest maze you could do was make a T shape, a T-junction. And a T-junction, does everyone know what T-junction is? Yeah. Okay. If you're driving your car and you're not quite sure where you're going, but you think you're going in the right direction, you're like, oh, okay, I think you just head north. We're gonna be there. We'll be there in time. I'm pretty sure we're not gonna get lost. And then you see a T-junction which goes east and west. I nearly forgot what the signs of the compass were then. East and west, and no other option. There's no north. You're gonna just go, oh no. And of course, you've got this time limit. Before you hit this junction, you have to make a choice. There's 11 cars behind you that start beeping at you, and you're like, oh my goodness, where do I go? And then that's the panic you feel in the game when you come to an area and there is a choice and neither of them is signposted. When you don't know which is the right way, you end up just going, okay, well, I'll go left then. And you almost look around as if to say, am I going the right way? you know, hoping that there's going to be a game designer there going, yeah, that's the way I wanted it to go. So you start heading down this left passageway, and then you go, it's okay, I was right. Okay, and then you get some confidence, or you go, no, I don't think so. This is, I'm going to go back the other way, and then of course you go to the same area and you go, was it that way? If you make players get lost in your game, they're going to just hate it, and they're going to feel nervous and scared. Of course, that's good in some games, like horror games, but at the same time, it's the kind of wrong kind of nervous. It's the kind of nervous which means that you're losing their interest rather than that they're excited to get past this difficult maze that you've made, this T-junction. So I believe that mazes stunt gameplay flow and player excitement, and you're probably going to disagree with me if you are making a maze game. Is anyone here making a maze game, by the way, before I go crazy? No? Okay, cool. I can get really stuck in. I think mazes are the lowest form of gameplay in games because it is a simple thing to make, but it's a horrible thing to play through. In fact, LittleBigPlanet on the PSP had a maze, and we didn't make it. But aside from that, the rest of the game was perfect. But then you've got this maze. I was like, a maze, what? And you basically just have to keep going through this maze, trying every option. Everybody does the same thing, right? They always go, I'm going to just keep going left. I'm going to keep following the left rule. Does everyone else do that when they hit maze? It's a very common thing. We have lots of mazes in England. It's pretty much just mazes. You tend to just go, I'm going to follow the left wall, and I'll eventually get to where I'm going to, because that's the way a maze is made. And this kind of works until you hit a piece which is isolated, and then you end up going just around it, which is not smart either. I think that they basically bore players, and all players want to do is look forward to getting to the next part of the game when they can start using the game properly. And another thing, which is something that really it upsets me, but I've come to terms with it. I've come to accept it. That if a motif requires written instruction, then it probably won't work because players hate reading tutorials. So we all read the internet, we all read blogs, and we all read Twilight. But does anyone here like reading tutorials in games? Hey, good. That's good. I'm pleased for you guys. You should love some games I've played recently. If you tend to require players to do a lot of reading, what you'll end up doing is just basically making them switch off, and they'll read the first 2 pages or the first two paragraphs. They go, okay, right, this is how I shoot. Okay, this is important. This is how I jump. Good. And you start saying, right, this is how your hit points work. They work on a X-based system. When you take damage, and it's blah blah blah. And they'll just go, okay, never mind, and they'll carry on. And if that's important, if that text is important to the player, they won't be able to enjoy your game as well as if it wasn't important. So we tried to make sure that all our gameplay was readable by the shape and the movement of the gameplay. If it was a wheel, I keep using wheel because it's simple. If it's a wheel and it turns, they know they need to run on it or run inside it. It doesn't require written instruction, but if it is a puzzle which requires that they click the 4 pieces of the zodiac sphere but put them together in the right order, unless that's basically the point of your game, it's just another puzzle which is going to frustrate them. They're going to go like, wait, what? I have to go back and read the thing again? And you know what? The last thing they'll ever do is go back and actually read that tutorial, which is really sad because you put effort into writing it. Okay, so here is an example of a particularly complex looking section of the level. I say complex because it's got a lot more shapes than we're used to putting in a LittleBigPlanet scene. Where would the majority of you, okay, this is Sat Girl, and you've just come in from the left. This is where you just come into this area, you just stood there. Where would you go? Would most of you, go on, go for it.
I would try to grab the zebra stripe ball.
Yep, the ball, grab the ball.
And then jump over to the other ball to avoid the mountain and then continue at the top.
Yeah, great, that's a perfect answer. I couldn't have expected anything better from you, and I'm really pleased you said that, because in this level, that is not the right way to go. But, I'll go for it. Have you played the game first?
No, I haven't.
Okay, good.
But I've got a suggestion. Could it be that you were supposed to grab the left zebra striped ball and pull it down to the left crocodile?
Oh, right, okay, well, great. Okay, you're thinking, yeah, definitely. I mean, this is quite an early level, so we wouldn't expect people to do that kind of stuff. But great, because you know what? There's 2 balls and there's 2 crocodiles, so why not? Now, the important part is you'd grab that and you'd notice it wouldn't come down, and then you'd go, oh, okay, well, what else do I do? So you can't actually see this in the picture, but right, good. Now, in this picture, we've suddenly, everything's changed as far as I can see, but then again, I worked on the game, so those zebra balls were the most standout piece of environment in the first screenshot. They were like everything else was brown or green, and they were like white and striped, and they were like, oh, exciting, wow, yeah, the ball's great. But now we've got these, and these are much brighter and more exciting and more round than those could ever be. And suddenly the player feels like the best way to go is jump down. Well, I hope that's how you feel anyway. I don't know. I thought it was a good example. I was trying to find a really good example of this. But this is what I think is really important. And also, it's more lit here. There's more lighting. There's more. The colours are brighter. Up there it's darker, and it's got a big Sackboy ×2, which could mean anything, and it could be quite scary. But yeah, the important part here is that all it takes is putting 6 bubbles, and you've just given the player direction, and they no longer feel lost. They just know that up there is something magical and interesting and exciting. So even if you still went up there, you'd find something fun, and there is lots of fun stuff up there. We made it, but fun stuff is also down. So it's good. It's good. Okay, what's next? Okay, here's another thing that I used to do an awful lot, and I'm sure a lot of you guys do as well. There is a temptation to make sure that your gameplay is hard, as in hard for you to play, because that's what's fun. You guys are probably quite bored of the game you've been building for a year or 2 years, and you're thinking, really wish I could challenge myself. And then you start building something that's really tricky, and you go, yeah, I get this. This puzzle's really smart. If I just, if I do this. And then, of course, you give it to a friend, and they're like, oh, great, I'll play this. And you go, what do I do? And you go, well, obviously, you grab this bit, and you slide it under there, and this bit falls on top of it, and then you jump on top of that. No. And then suddenly they're saying to you, I don't get it. And you suddenly feel really stupid because you've made something that is hard for you and fun for you, but you've forgotten that these people weren't in your head. They weren't you. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know what you've experienced, and they don't know. All they know is what they're seeing. So it's really important that you make your levels way easier than you'd like them to be, because at the end of the day, people will still find it fun because they're enjoying it, and they will still find it hard. I mean, there are exceptions, like if you're making a hardcore shooter, a lot of people get really good at shooting very quickly, and often you can make a game like, I'm sure Call of Duty people, the Call of Duty Modern Warfare people made the game, and then found out the players just burned through their game as fast as they could, and it was like, oh well, yeah, I just shot people. But the important part of that is that if they'd have made it as hard as possible for hardcore shooters, new people to the game would have picked it up and just been blown away, and just not in a good way, they'd have just been blown away. And it would have been a really sucky experience for them. So it's important to make sure that your gameplay is not too hard. And always design for your target audience. And you guys all want to go off and work on awesome games. I'm sure you will. I'm sure you'll work on, because you're Swedish, and there's about 1 million Swedish people in Guildford working on awesome games. So you should probably come to Guildford. But you might end up working on something like, I'm trying not to pick a game which actually exists. I'm trying to think of I don't know, SpongeBob SquarePants something. And that's a perfectly valid job. It's a perfectly good career choice. But the important thing is you're not making it suddenly for the people who made Oblivion. You're not making it for Blizzards, and you're not making it for game players who are going to be really at the top of their game. You're making it for young children. And so it's important that you design your levels to work for those young children. And it can never be simple. And I mean, children are amazing at games. Children were actually better at LittleBigPlanet in our playtests than the 16 to 24 age group, because they didn't have any prior didn't know any prior knowledge of what a platformer should be like, or how it should play, or what's a floaty jump. But when you get children in, they can basically learn very quickly and understand it very quickly. But at the same time, if you use concepts which they won't be familiar with, which is like currency and hit point allocation and stuff like that, they're going to be like, what? And then of course you've lost them, and you haven't done your job as a designer. You've created a game for you, not for them. So yes, important. Use cameras to direct the player, but not control them. Now, I love cutscenes. I think cutscenes are great fun, and if used sparingly, they can really add a lot of environment, a lot of mood and story to a game. The trouble, I think, is when you take someone who's really enjoying a piece of gameplay, and he's really getting through this level, he's doing very well, he's getting good at shooting, he's finally got the hang of the shotgun, and then you just yank control of him, hey, check out this cool stuff we've done in 3D Max, where we can basically show you how awesome your character could be if it wasn't you. And that really sucks, because a game which I love, like Devil May Cry, I love Devil May Cry, it's like one of my favourite games. But at the same time, they'll often do this really annoying thing, which is where you're controlling Dante, and he's cool. he can like stand on swords and he can pull swords out of his body and he can use his double hand. Who's played Devil May Cry, by the way? Yeah, good. I'm not talking to people who don't know what I'm talking about. He's awesome. But if you've just started the game and you're just basically learning how to shoot and you're just basically hammering square, like thinking, okay, I've got the hang of this, this is pretty cool. And then suddenly these cut out and show you a cutscene where he's doing cartwheels and lopping the heads off thousands of enemies, more than you've fought yet, in one swipe, and then basically smokes a cigar at the same time. You're basically going, oh, I'm not as cool as him. And I wanted to be as cool as him, and I'm not. And the problem is that you've shown me a flashy cutscene which makes me feel stupid and rubbish at the game, which isn't, I don't think it's cool, but I see why you've done it because it does look cool. You go, wow, a cool cutscene. Yeah, okay, well, Half-Life, I think, is a great example of a game which basically keeps the player in his body. He's able to do and feel all the things he's felt the whole way through the game while watching this awesome cutscene, such as like, things attacking or Combine coming in on ropes or whatever. But you feel like you're in control, so therefore, you don't mind watching it. You wouldn't mind if this cutscene was 5 minutes long, as long as you're still in control and you can still look at what you want to look at. And it's a great example. In LittleBigPlanet, we've tried to keep that as well, because in LittleBigPlanet 2 we can now use cutscenes, but I've always said keep cutscenes to less than 3 seconds, which sounds like a short time, but it is actually a long time when you're wanting to get on with the level. Yeah, we do a couple of those. Finally, you use risk and reward to provide additional challenge to a level which may be otherwise too simplistic or for advanced players. So we're making this game that's supposed to be for everybody, and one of the problems with that is if it's for everybody, it needs to be for the weakest players. I wasn't going to say the stupidest players, because that's not fair. The weakest players, players who don't know where to go or find it really difficult to jump over stuff. And that's really important that we help those players, because they are tomorrow's FPS champions or strategy game winners. I mean, people have got into games through LittleBigPlanet that probably wouldn't have played a game before, and now they're going to go on and buy an Xbox and get an awesome gaming rig and then beat you at Counter-Strike. But the important part is that the game must be good for them. It must be really fun for them. But how do you have a game which is fun for somebody and then reward people who are really good at games? So basically, you guys. I'm really sucking up to you. Have you noticed that? Just trying to get some positive feedback. Trying to get some. The way to do that is to make sure that in every section, which you have, I'm going to go to the next slide. Every section where there's something nice and easy to do, you have risk and reward bolted on the sides. So in this section here, we have a giant walking elephant. This is the elephant. If it doesn't look like an elephant, it is one, I promise. This elephant actually walks slowly across the fire pit. And it walks over till off the screen and basically takes you to the next section of the level. It's very safe to stand on. It's very safe to be on. And you can just stand there like that, like this character doing. Just wait until it's over. And that's not very fun though, but it is safe. So if you're rubbish at the game, if you don't feel comfortable, you can stay there. But have you noticed that the camera is subtly angled up to all these lovely, delicious points bubbles and prize bubbles? And there's all kinds of exciting things. And you know that, and there'll be movement, like this piece at the top there is moving and looking exciting. And what that does is allows the player to think, I think I might just try for that. So they're able to decide the skill level of this game for themselves. We haven't got skill settings. We haven't got like easy, medium, hard. We've just got the game. So the player has to decide for themselves how adventurous they want to be. So if you're a ninja, you'd leap up into that block, collect these bubbles, nip up there, grab that thing, grab all these things, pull the lever, get the other prize bubbles, and jump onto the thing before it's even reached the next screen. Cool. You've just made yourself feel awesome. You've made the game as awesome as you want it to be, and I didn't have to do anything to make that happen. It was just put some stuff up there. But that's really important because, a lot of people will say, "Oh, I played this game with my son. He was 5 years old, and he was playing for the first time. But I just stood on the elephant, and he went off and got all these collectibles. So he's awesome." And I felt I was able to just get through it with him, because usually he just destroys me at all these games, which is usually what happens. The parents get ruined by their children. Same with this little section here. I mean, it's another section from the same level. It's not a really long level, by the way. I've just taken a lot of screenshots from it. The idea is to get from where Satgirl is. I can use the mouse. Look at this. From where Satgirl is here to here. Oh, that's really cool. It's really simple. Obviously, you just walk along the top of these boxes. These boxes actually go up and down. So when this box comes down, you can then jump off and jump down there. But there are nice collectibles inside the boxes, which just tempts you to be a bit more, adventurous around this gameplay and really try and get those collectibles. They're not even worth much, but the important part is it's a challenge for you. players don't really need much of a reward. They just need the challenge to be able to see if they can say that they've done it. Oh yeah, I collected all the prize bubbles in this level. I got 100%. That's enough in itself. That's enough to make people do crazy stuff just to try and say that they've done this. I mean, that's what trophies are built on, and I love trophies. I'm a trophy whore. And the final thing I'm going to talk to, because I'm just about to hit an hour, but is that okay? Is that cool if I go over an hour? Have you guys got anywhere to be? Oh, brilliant. Great. I've got plenty of time. I'm going to talk about working well within a team, and this is something that you guys have more experience with than I did when I started working in the games industry. So when I joined the team, I was expecting to have to work with them, but I didn't know how this was going to pan out for me. Now, the first part is you have to accept that not everything that you do will be good. And I'm sure you've experienced this already, that you'll have off days or down days or days when you build something which just was a big waste of time. But that's okay, because not everything you do will be good. And if you start to panic and worry about this aspect of the game, like, oh, I haven't built a really awesome motif today and it's getting to like 5 o'clock and I have to go home soon and I haven't built anything awesome, you're just going to start panicking, and that's just rubbish. Nobody wants you to panic. They all want you to be relaxed and chilled and happy. You know, go and get an ice cream or something instead. So accept that everything you do will be good. And expect to receive constructive criticism in addition to positive feedback. Who knows what constructive criticism is here? Good. Hands up if you received constructive criticism. Wow, good. It's good to hear. If you haven't, you will receive some at some point, and you will be shocked. It will be when you hand your game over to someone who isn't a friend, and they go, oh yeah, I didn't really enjoy that at all. I liked the bit when it ended, but that's pretty much it. And then you'll basically look at them and think, what? This has never happened to me. I've never heard this before. This isn't what I was expecting. I don't understand. So the important part is that you should get used to receiving negative criticism. It doesn't mean that your level is bad, and it doesn't mean that it's irretrievable. You know, you can still build an awesome level, but the important part is that you need to accept this criticism and go, okay, and think about what they've said, bearing in mind that a lot of people will say they'll decide that the problem is something, but it might be something else. So a good example, I think, would be Killzone 2. I really like Killzone. It's a good game. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed playing the single player, but I didn't get well with it online, despite loving shooters. So I really love Call of Duty. I think it's one of my favourite shooters. Who here likes Killzone for a start? Right, who likes Call of Duty? Oh, it's quite even. It's quite even. And a lot of the reason people don't like Killzone as much as Call of Duty, I think generally, there's no facts here, I'm just speaking as an opinion, is that it runs at 30 frames per second rather than 60 frames per second. And that's my own opinion. My opinion is that Call of Duty feels better because it's silky smooth at all times. It never drops in frame rate, really. It feels really good, and you always have complete pinpoint control over your character. You feel that when you pull that button, that trigger button, a round is going to go off, it's going to sound good, it's going to be instantaneous. Whereas Killzone suffers from a slight lag and delay and clunkiness to everything you do. And obviously that was designed. A lot of people, the Killzone team are very professional, they know what they're doing, and they designed it to feel like heavy and weighty. But I have a feeling that a lot of people don't notice how important something like running at 60 frames per second is. Does anyone know what frames per second means, by the way? Because I'm probably going to lose a lot of you otherwise. Okay, so has anyone ever spoken to you about how important it is that games run smoothly and run at a constant frame rate? Yeah, because if you don't, I mean, LittleBigPlanet 1 ran at 10 frames per second till about a month before we launched the game. We were really panicking. Because we didn't know if anything was fun. It didn't feel fun. All our playtesting was awful. Our first playtesting on pretty much the finished game, they gave back an average score of 3 out of 10. And we were like, because 3 out of 10 is awful. That's not what you want to be shooting. You want to be shooting for 8s and 9s, but we were looking at a 3 out of 10 game, and it was really scary. And what happened next was that we had the game rebuilt, and it ran at a solid 30 frames per second, and our review score went up to 8 and 9 from all our testers. And I thought, well, we didn't change the gameplay, and the reason was that they felt it was really slick. But the important part was that they didn't like the first one. It wasn't why they didn't like it, it's that they didn't like it. So we had to act upon what we thought it was they didn't like. And they'll often say something like, oh, I didn't like it because it wasn't fun. And you go, okay, what wasn't fun? Oh, I just didn't like it wasn't fun. And if you could make it more fun, that'd be really good. So we came up with this great phrase, I should have written it in here, which was, make it fun. And it's something we always joke about, like when we do our reviews, we look at it and go, yeah, why don't you just make it fun? It's as simple as that. So yeah, expect to receive, I've gone off on a tangent there, sorry about that. Learn to listen and understand criticism. Oh, well, that's what I was just talking about, so I have covered a little bit. So understanding what it is they're saying when they criticize the level. They might be saying, oh, I don't like this part, but really it might be a bit deeper than that. It might be that they just didn't have a very good experience in general, and that was just one of the things that really stuck with them. But I'm not saying don't listen to them, obviously, don't listen to what they're saying, but a lot of people will say, oh, I didn't like this level because the jump wasn't high enough, or I couldn't jump high enough. And you think, well, hold on. I built this level to actually hopefully work well with the character. So really what you mean is my ledges were too high, and not that the player couldn't jump high enough. So you really need to think about the cause of what their problem is, not like their solution that comes up with. They come up with solutions for you. They'll say, hey, we paid a company to review, play test our game, an external company, paid a lot of money, paid like £15,000, which is like, I don't know how much that is in krona, but it's a lot. And they came back with like a 20-page document, and one of the document pages was, one of the levels they critiqued was a level I made, which is called the mines, and I don't like that level. It's really too long. It's just too long, and it's a little bit boring, and it's very hard, and you die right at the end under a boulder, a flaming boulder, when you should have just finished it. So that's what I think is wrong with that level. And they thought what was wrong with the level is that it didn't have water in it. And I was just like, okay, what? And he said the level didn't have water in it. We think this level would benefit from the introduction of physical water, like water flowing down into the caverns, filling up, and you have to get out of it as quickly as possible, otherwise you'll drown. And I was like, right, that's not what the game is, so thanks anyway for your help, but you've just wasted our money. So it's important to look at, basically they didn't like that level, and they started trying to formulate things that would make this level better. So it's up to you to look at the fact they didn't like the level and start formulating those things instead, because it's you that gets paid to do it. Treat all feedback as valuable, as it helps make your level design better. So when you have built this amazing level that you think is perfect, and they go, yeah, it's good, but it's a bit long. Don't think, I have to cut some of this awesome stuff out. But it's all awesome, it's so good. What should I cut? Just think, you know what? Maybe this level would benefit from being shorter. Maybe it was really good, and then people started getting a bit bored at the end. Maybe it's important that I actually do cut a chunk out. So try and take it as that they're not trying to damage your work or impact on your work in a negative way. They're just trying to make it fun, make it more important. So the more that you listen to other people, the better your work will be. And don't forget, you do have ownership over it. You did create it. You did build all the assets. So it's not like they're trying to steal some of your level off you. They're not trying to say like, oh, I really want to be part of this level, so I'm going to tell you just try and chuck some stuff in just to make it different. They're just trying to make it fun. Hopefully, you might work with some awful people, but that won't be the case, I'm sure. When it is your turn to give feedback, use the feedback sandwich model. Who knows what the feedback sandwich is? Who knows? Do you know? Hang on.
Positive, negative, positive.
That's it. That's perfect. I was going to say, who knows what a sandwich it was, but then that's correct. It's the best way to give feedback. So I'd begin by saying something along the lines of, "Wow, I really enjoyed the second half of the level. That was really cool. I liked the boulder." But what I didn't like was the bit near the beginning where I kept getting killed by the rhinoceros. It was too hard. But if you use more of that boulder stuff at the start, it would be really cool. So what you do there is, it's quite a simple psychological not prospect, that's the wrong word. Psychological thing, where you build up someone's confidence with a positive. You give them some praise, which everyone loves getting praise. It's good. I'm sure your lectures give you lots of praise for everything you do. And once you've had this praise, you go, okay, and then you become more receptive to what this person's saying because you automatically believe that they have a good opinion. They obviously like your level because they just said so they have a good opinion, right? And then they can say something negative and you go, oh, okay, well that must make sense because he does have a cool opinion, he likes my level, so okay, I'll listen to that. And then finally you finish off with a positive thing to say like, hey, but don't worry, because that bit's really cool, it's quite easy to fix. It's always nice to try and give them a solution rather than just a problem. You know, if you say to them, yeah, I didn't like that level very much. I got stuck really, really hard. And they go, oh, okay, so where did you get stuck? Oh, just everywhere, really. I'd definitely work on making it easier not to get stuck. They're going to go away and just be just as useless, not useless, God, that's terrible to say. They're going to be just as, like, they'll be as in the dark as before you even start speaking to them. So it's very important to give them, try and give direction. recognize your strengths and weaknesses within the team. Okay, so you're not all going to be good at everything. It's very important that you don't believe that you should be. I mean, if you start feeling like you have to be good at everything, then you're going to start becoming weak at everything. In the stage you guys are at now, when you're at university and you're learning, it's good to try everything and really experience everything. But by the end of your third year, you're in the third year now, most of you, aren't you? Who here is in the third year? Oh, cool. And who is in the first year? Oh, wow, cool. Great, I'm getting you young, that's good. Well, especially you guys in the third year, you'll pretty much know now what is important in your courses, like which part is important to you, which part is you're best at. Well, don't worry about the other stuff, because if that's what you're best at, focus your efforts on that, really excel in those areas, There's no point in being like, there's a great phrase in England, I don't know if you have it here, but it's jack of all trades, master of none. Don't know if you've heard that before. Okay, it's like, so being the jack of all trades is great. I mean, you're useful for something, but it's very hard to get hired when you're not the master of something. It's good to go into a company when I am the best at 3D banana modeling. I am the best. So if you ever come across a Donkey Kong game, you're going to be in work forever. But then when you're inside that game, then you can work on your other areas. So when you're inside part of a team, you need to recognize your strengths and weaknesses. So I'll tell you my strength and I'll tell you my weakness. I'll tell you my strength first to big myself up, and then the weakness you can laugh at me later. So the strength is that I'm really good at game flow and directing players and fast, exciting gameplay. I like not spending too much time in one area, and I like making the player feel like they're a ninja. Making players, for instance, that's why I think I prefer Sonic to Mario. I don't know if most of you wouldn't agree with me, but I do prefer. This is old school Sonic though, not new Sonic, the Hedgehog with not the werewolf or the handgun guy. But my negatives is that I'm really bad at mechanics. So I don't mean mechanics as in design mechanics. I mean mechanics as in how a piston should work. And because our game is so physical, this is actually a lot of engineering went into it. So in the first game, to make a door close, you needed to use like pulleys and all kinds of crazy stuff and all kinds of pistons, and it's all above my head. And I was just like, wow. But luckily, we have quite a few people on our team who are really good at mechanics and bosses. So they make the bosses, and bosses obviously require a lot of technical ability to be able to create a boss. Whereas I just do the bits which link them, which might sound like a lesser quality, but man, these guys didn't know how to link the levels together very well. They were like, oh, I've got this great set piece. Remember that set piece from earlier? And then it links to this boss, but I don't really know what to put in between. And I go, okay, cool. And he just chuck it over to me, and I just work out a nice flowing piece of gameplay that would work to link well. So the important part was that I was able to rely on them for the bits that were my weaknesses, and I was able to really help them out with my strengths. So it's good when you're part of a team that you recognise this soon and stop trying to be the best at everything, because well, it's just very, very hard to do. I'm sure it is possible. I'm sure there are some fantastic people out there who literally are the best artist and the best designer and the best sound technician in the game. But you're probably going to get frustrated most places you go because everyone else is worse than you. Okay, so this is important about playing to your strengths at appropriate times. So when we're finishing LittleBigPlanet 2 right now. I've got to get back today, and I'll go straight back to work and finish the game. I've got a bug list, a very long bug list in my levels. But the important part is that I'm not now, right at this moment, this is crucial to the project, trying to improve myself in other areas. I'm not trying to like, hey, I'm going to totally try my hand out at like 3D Studio Max, or I'm going to get out like Fmod and start working with sound programming or whatever. These things are really important to understand when it's not an important time. So now is the perfect time for you guys. You can learn, especially first year students, you can try all the aspects of game design and level design, but when you get into your company, you'll probably need to do that in your own time, because you're going to just otherwise waste their money. Now, achievement. This is the end of my presentation. Great, I've got there. It's great. So after all that, hopefully you guys will now have familiarity with common AAA level design. Does everyone know what AAA means, though? You do? Good. No? Do you want me to explain what that means? It means nothing. No, what it means is a game which is deemed to be of top quality, and there really is no criteria for this. LittleBigPlanet was deemed to be a AAA game, but I cannot see why, because it was made by 20-something people in a bathroom warehouse above a shop, and it was... Go on.
I heard something about the PR budgets,
right.
The commercials.
Now that is a good... Maybe that's where it comes from. Wow.
That the bigger
The more A's, the more A's they give it. No, well that is definitely true. But at the same time, I have no idea why it's A. That's what I have no idea why it's A. I don't know what it stands for. Maybe awesome. It's triple awesome game. But what it really means is that you know this is where you want to be ending up working. You want to be working on Halo is a AAA game. There's loads of AAA games out there which are really good, and I'm guessing it's just the hype around games and how awesome it is. So hopefully I've given you some ideas. I mean, I don't know what your actual level of skill or knowledge is at the moment. So after this, we're going to have more intimate discussions. Is that right? Okay, okay, you're right, fine, it's up to me. Great, we're going to have a more intimate discussion. We're going to actually answer questions, which is much more important, I think, for you guys. But the stuff I've listed here will take you through any game you design. I'm not talking about like gameplay mechanic design or anything like that, or character design. I'm talking about levels. But this is very common stuff, and this is stuff that if you know it, you'll be able to walk into any job and in the first day have an impact on that company and really excel. So, good. You understand the process of designing a level from white box to completion, although I realise I didn't talk about how to complete the level, but I'm hoping that I could talk about that later. And you understand gameplay flow and player direction in the context of a 2D level. I'm sure you've seen some of this before. I mean, how many of you have seen some of these things written down or presented to you before in other lectures? Oh, cool. Not many. That's kind of cool. I'm pleased I've been able to give you something. But gameplay flow and player direction is something that is really cool for designers to know. If you know how to do that, then you can make people feel good in your game, even if the game itself turns out not to be a very good game. So, you might end up working in a game which isn't destined to be a 10 million copy selling game and might not get the review scores, but you can still really practice your art and really help to drive players through the game and really, excel. It's doing the best you can do. If you stick to this stuff, you'll be able to do that. And you can now reflect on teamwork in level design. I really could have gone into that more, because teamwork is something that I guess you don't really experience unless you've had what you guys have. Most people tend to start off in their bedrooms working on single games like programming or designing levels for other games, but it's very difficult to understand how to work in a team unless you've sat in the same room with people. Instant Messenger is great, webcam is good, but unless you're sat next to somebody and you can literally just turn around and go, hey, John, what do you think of this? And he goes, it's rubbish. And you go, cool. And then you can just, that is so instantaneous and it saves so much time. You can spend. There was one example in the first game, LittleBigPlanet 1, when I spent 4 days working on something, 4 long days working on a train system. Did anyone play the subway level in the game, in LittleBigPlanet 1? It was quite far in, but it was a subway. That ended up being just basically platforms that move through a subway. What it started out was a train system that you could control, drive to stations, pick up passengers, take the passengers to the correct coloured stations, because they want to go from the red passengers want to go to red station, green passengers to green station. And it was a mess. It was a disaster, because I basically didn't get people to test it, and I waited till I thought it was done, and then I showed it to them, and they were like, what? And I just thought, like, what an idiot. Why did I persist with this? I could have known that this wasn't a good idea in the first 10 minutes if I just made a prototype in 10 minutes and then gone, do you like this idea? And they go, nah. And, being part of a team allows you access to that kind of, we call it a sanity check. Have you ever heard that before? It's to make sure you're not going insane and that you have a check from someone else who is external to make sure that you're not doing something stupid. And that's the end of my presentation. There you go. Okay, so how about some of you start shouting stuff at me and I just talk back to you, basically. Who would like to go first? Go for it. What do you want to know?
What kind of monitors are you testing the game on? Because a lot of monitors are really wide, and obviously that gives a different camera perspective. And you're also talking about navigating the level vertically rather than horizontally. How do you test that?
Cool. Good question. Right. So, on the first game, we didn't actually have. You have HD monitors and you have SD monitors. Does everyone know what they mean before I go any further? I don't want to. Yep. HD and SD. Do you know what SD means? Okay, so HD is high definition, and they tend to be 720. It's like, do you guys know what HD means? I'm just going to go through all the aspects so you guys can get a better. Okay, so HD is at least 720 pixels down the right-hand side of the screen, down the screen from top to bottom. And this gives quite a crisp picture. It's what it's what Xbox does. It's what PS3 does. The Wii doesn't do that, but it's not an HD console. So when we playtest the game, we playtest it with HD TVs, which are TVs which have that many pixels, and we play them with SD TVs, which are TVs which don't. And the important thing to remember is that SD always looks a little bit more blurry and a little bit more unfocused and a little bit less clear, and also is very rarely widescreen, like you mentioned, which is perfect. So what we realized once we built most of the first game was that when you actually play this HD game on SD TV, you lose. You lose probably this much down one side and this much down this side of gameplay area. And you're suddenly stuck then with puzzles which worked before, but now the bits are just off the screen. And this was a nightmare, so we actually had to go back and change loads of stuff. LittleBigPlanet 1 also had some really crappy technology in it that the way we presented SD was that the PS3 rendered a HD screen and then cut some bits off and then threw them away and then like repackaged, which took a bit longer. So the game actually ran worse at a lower frame rate, and a lower definition, which is unheard of. If you're playing a PC game and you turn the definition down, it usually runs twice as good, but it ran worse, which is really bad. So for LittleBigPlanet 2, we have this clever little system now, which you select how big your TV screen is at the start I'm sure you've all seen that when you've booted up a game for the first time. It says, make sure the triangles can be seen, and that allows us then to resize the gameplay on the fly to fit that screen. So you can then see all of a puzzle and be able to play through that puzzle. As far as vertical gameplay, that's much harder to do because, like you said, you have less screen space going up and down than you do left and right. So suddenly the gameplay you make has to be much closer in and more focused, and you have to use camera tilts to be able to show it off best. And camera tilts are cool, but they can be quite disorienting for the player, because suddenly the game is changed and it's not what they're used to, and the perspective is all weird. I mean, LittleBigPlanet is a 2D game, but you've got 3 layers. 3 layers that you can stand on deep into the screen. And once you start exposing that, the player is actually in front of something which is behind them, but they're still collecting it. So they could be, from above, it looks like they're just coming down on top of this bubble, this prize bubble. But if you change this perspective, the prize bubble is back there, they come down here and they just pick it up and they just don't know why that was, and they feel confused. And you've got to be very careful when you do vertical gameplay that you don't screw people up. And yeah, it's all simple. It all seems simple, but it's only when you see it happening that you realise that these are things you should have thought of before. So hopefully this will be good for you. Are you going to go in?
How far do you take it? Do you take it to like 15-inch SD TVs and force people
Yep.
to play them?
Yeah, we have testers. This is great. We have in our QA department. Sorry, I'm going to drink some apple juice. In our QA department, which is quality assurance, our testers, there's always one person playing on SD TV, and sometimes he's playing in what we call a debug mode. It's a programmer term. I'm trying to think what it's called now. It's a build which basically stops every single frame of the game, stops for a small period and just checks that everything hasn't broken. So it runs at like 5 frames per second, if that. It is excruciating, so it can take them anywhere up to half an hour to finish a 5-minute level. On an SD TV, it's basically like hell for those poor guys. And they all do a rota as to who has to do this. But he sits there with his tiny little monitor and it's giving him massive radiation into his face for 10 hours when he's playing it. He's just, it's excruciating, but it's very important we do that because people will buy a PS3, like a HD console, and then stick it into the back of their TV with a SCART cable, which is an awful English. Do you guys even have SCART here? Yeah. Oh my God, it's awful. It's awful. And it basically ruins the game. If you could put tons of effort into your awesome HD graphics and just gets put through a SCART cable and you just wasted your time. But they have to test that. It's important that they do, because that when people get it home, they don't have a terribly crap experience. Go for it.
I have a question about colors. In a level, are you restricting the amount of different colors in a special way, and which do you prefer for different elements in the level?
Good. Okay. Well, it's definitely more of an artist's job to worry about colours, but we do. Well, I have like knowledge of that, but it's more like an artist will be able to give you a lot more on that.